The lifeblood of a democracy is your ability to understand and act upon a problem once the facts are presented to you. The purpose of this motion picture is to give you the facts, and then you, as individuals and citizens of a democracy, must take action.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. Today, we're going to be welcoming back one of my favorite ufologists and MUFON representatives, Mr. Rich Hoffman. Rich is the state director for MUFON for both Alabama and Mississippi, I believe. And he is here tonight, or will be here tonight, to talk to us about the Mississippi pilot case. If you have not heard about this case or don't know much about it, you'll definitely want to stay tuned, because this case actually has some hard proof evidence, I guess you would say, mainly in the realm of radar data. And it seems to me like it matches up almost exactly with what the pilot of the Cessna plane reported. It appears that this object that this pilot reported was first noticed on one of his wings, just off the side of his wings. And then the radar data shows this thing jumping from speeds between 150 miles an hour down to 35 miles an hour, and then speeding up again and doing some radical turns. Bizarre stuff. Bizarre. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned and listen to Mr. Hoffman tell us about this. So don't go away. We'll be back in 1 minute, and we'll be speaking to Mr. Rich Hoffman. Don't go away.
New tonight at 6. Do you believe in UFOs? Well, one area group certainly does, and members believe that UFOs, or unidentified flying objects, are not only real, but have been spotted in places like Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana.
Who knew? Blaine Herford had a conversation recently with one of the group's leaders.
Well, the mission of MUFON is to scientifically study UFOs for the benefit of humanity.
That's Richard Hoffman, the director of the Mutual Unidentified Flying Object Network for both Mississippi and Alabama. The Dayton, Ohio native has been a member of MUFON since the organization was founded in 1969. His travels have taken him all over the country, cataloging and studying alleged UFO sightings. If you think he's kidding, you'd be wrong. In fact, he says just last year, they were busily tracking UFO sightings in our area.
Alabama, for example, last year had somewhere around in the range of about 70 sightings that it reported. Mississippi had about half of those.
But one of those reported sightings, he says, has gained prominence throughout the network, and it's being featured on the group's website as the Mississippi pilot case. Hoffman offers radar images of the Mississippi pilot case, which he says show an object of some kind following alongside a Cessna airplane flown out of Slidell, Louisiana. This is a rendered photo of what he says the pilot says he saw.
And as he's approaching, on his approach heading north, he ends up running across this object that was just underneath his wing of his Cessna. That's how close it was. Now, what flies that fast, does that kind of banking turn, and makes that incredible kind of maneuvering? We don't know.
Hoffman says there are as many as 700 sightings reported each month across the globe. Multiply that by 12, he says, and you see why he and his members are keeping busy. However, he does caution that sometimes things are not always what they seem.
Like here's a cloud, lenticular cloud, and we separate out from the clouds as much as we can, you know.
There have been other mistakes too, he says, which turn out to be smudges on a woman's windshield. But despite the mistakes and even downright skepticism of many, Hoffman and MUFON hold fast that there is something out there watching us, and we need to know what it is.
And that means we have to spend time studying. So we need people that have an interest in it, who want to study.
In Huntsville, Alabama, Wayne Herford, WTVA News.
And if you would like to know more about the Mutual UFO Network, you can visit their website at MUFON.com.
Welcome back, everybody. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and bring our guest on for the evening, Mr. Rich Hoffman. Rich, are you out there, sir?
I am here. Rick, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for coming back for your second appearance here on Topic UFO. I appreciate that.
No problem. I'm looking forward to being with you again.
Now, Rich, the last time you were here, I believe you were the state director for MUFON for either 2 or 3 states. I can't remember. But right now you're the state director for Alabama and Mississippi. Is that it?
That is correct.
Okay. All right. So this case that we're going to be speaking about tonight, the Mississippi pilot case. I have gone over this information that you've sent me, and number one, I mean, just a super bizarre case, but number two, quite a bit of information to go with it, right?
Yeah, quite a bit of information is correct. The pilot himself was extremely beneficial and helpful for us to be able to compile and put the report together. And then there was an extensive amount of work with the radar, which I can talk to you about as well.
Excellent. So why don't we go ahead and start off, give us a little briefing of exactly what occurred.
Sure, Rick. In fact, we're coming up almost a year ago on this case when it happened. It happened on April 13th, 2013. And the weather was very nice. It was a bright day, and there was a bit of a gusty wind at the time. At least it showed on the weather that was like about 9 miles per hour. It was a great day for being outdoors and doing flying, and that's exactly what the pilot did. Pilot liked to go up and do recreational flying. He's got a Cessna 172 that's been modified, and it's more like a 180 aircraft. And he was out for a typical spin and leaving Slidell, Louisiana, the airport in Slidell, and heading northward just west of Picayune, Mississippi. And he was going through the region that's called I think if I pronounce this correct, it's Bauchita.
It's not an easy one there.
Not an easy one. It's a Choctaw name for Big Creek, but it's they have a national wildlife area. And he was flying along. Like I said, it was a very nice day, and he's heading up north. And as he gets up near the Picayune area, that's when he sees just off to the right of his wing, underneath his wing, a very bright object that appeared to be kind of like the rugby football kind of shape, if you would, or object. And it had some sort of a triangular dorsal on it. And that dorsal was directed or pointing towards him as it was moving along next to his plane. Now, he was flying at about 140 miles, between 140 to 150 miles per hour. And he was at about 2,500 feet altitude at the time. Anyway, he sees this object. He's like, does a double take kind of thing and looks over, and he's not sure what he's like seeing. And but But anyway, it paced along with him for just a short bit, and then after a matter of just seconds or so, the object started to slip towards the back end of the plane, and he perceived that it was basically moving off and going away from him. And that was quite shocking. He didn't experience any kind of electromagnetic effects when I talked with them. He didn't experience any kind of like psychological kind of an effect from it, other than the fact that he was highly curious as to what it was. And he just didn't know what to make of it. And he continued up north for just a little bit, and then decided to start coming back south, head back to his landing in Slidell. And of course, kept looking for it after that, and never got to see it again after that just short instance. Now, he described the object as very, very much like a mylar kind of like a balloon, very high silvery polish to it. And then again, he talked about like a dorsal fin being on it that was actually pointing toward him. No other indications of any kind of like seams or anything like that. No kind of propulsion other than that on the bottom side of it. And like I said, he just didn't know what to make of it. So he decided he was going to file a report. And of course, that's when...
With the FAA or with MUFON?
With MUFON.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he had... I guess he thought about it for a while to know whether or not he really wanted to do that. But anyway, he chose to do it, and I'm grateful that he did. Very nice man. I had the deepest... He was extremely cooperative with us, and I went back and forth with constant conversations and asking him questions. And we thought, well, this is kind of an interesting case, and, it was a very short time sighting, and we probably wouldn't... couldn't get anything more than that. I mean, I had called Picayune to see an airport to see if there was any activity. There was no activity that they were aware of. Nobody seemed to know anything about it. You kept trying to scan to see if anybody on the ground may have seen it, because guess what? This was at about 3:30 in the afternoon. So this was full daylight.
Wow.
And so during the daylight hours, in the midday, but if you take a look at this area, it's a national wildlife area. There's really if you look at that from even Google Earth, you'll see that there's no homes, no nothing. It's just empty, and so that probably would account for the fact that you didn't hear or see something on the ground being reported. Anyway, I thought nothing more of that, and it was about, and I basically put my report together, and then I went to the MUFON Symposium in Las Vegas, and by the way, when the symposium was being held in Las Vegas, that was in July, and the July issue of the MUFON Journal featured this case. Mm. And what I found out was after a few days later, when I was at the symposium about, I want to say maybe the 18th or something like that, I was leading the state directors meeting, and lo and behold, William Puckett, who is the state director for Montana, mentioned that he had filed a FOIA request to get get basically FAA and data, radar data on the time that I had from 7 different locations. Wait
a minute.
Yeah, go ahead.
Tell me more about that. Why did he put in for 7 different locations at the same time?
Well, so, you got to realize that the case that I had put together was in April, and it was published in July, and a lot of people get the journal right up front in the very, very beginning. And so he saw it, and he said, wow, well, here's a pilot case. I'm going to go put in a FOIA request to see if I can get data. And he went and fired off the request to Hill Air Force Base near Ogden, Utah, and requested, in the FOIA request to see if he could get radar data for that date and that time. And he said he was going to be doing that. And I thought, wow, that's exceptionally great. I hope that comes through. And then lo and behold, he gets the radar data provided from the FOIA request. And then from that point on, started to then look at and analyze each of the data sets that he did receive. And, he sees from the Slidell, radar site, he sees the plane flying along.
Okay.
And then we were able to plot the plane. And guess what? Only one out of all of those data sets comes through with showing now the object maneuvering.
Wow.
And that was the one from Citronelle, Grand Bay in Alabama, that is got the latest and greatest in terms of the radar sets. Got the common air radar surveillance system. It's got the latest equipment, and that picks up the object maneuvering around northwest of the Picayune area, and then making a lot of incredible turns. And then we've been able to plot that along with the aircraft movement from the Slidell radar, and you're able to now track where the object was in relationship to the aircraft.
Now, this is what you're just talking about there. That's this figure 3 and figure 4, I believe, that you sent me. It's got the round spheres showing the Cessna. It's got the triangles showing the UFO returns.
Correct.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, so, and what's incredible about it here is, again, it's like, it confirms, I didn't question the pilot's credibility at all. He's just an exceptionally great man that has, wants to do the right thing in terms of reporting this and everything else. And I got into a relationship with him just to learn more about him. And he's got a heck of a reputation. Well, here we are now validating his object sighting, which he never even expected that we could even do. Right. And we didn't even think we'd be able to do it. I didn't even think that we'd be able to do it. And then, next thing I know is Bill Puckett has got the radar information from FOIA, or the FOIA request that he put in, and he's checking through it, and now we're finding an object. So bottom line is we're able to now track the object and its relationship to his aircraft as he's moving up. And to him, the object was like no further than like about 8 feet off of his wing. It was right there. He described it as being maybe about between 10 to 12 feet, maybe in terms of its width. I talked with him and said, well, how big was it if you were to sit in your pilot seat, and what object would you hold up here to be able to give me the size? And he said, well, it's about the size of a baseball. And he had that at arm's length. And so I did the computation on it, and yeah, it would have been matching the size and everything else that the object was. But the interesting thing about it is that the radar shows that this object in figure 5, for example, that I gave you, and I hope your audience can see these, by the way.
Yes, they can.
So bottom line is on figure 5, you can see the direction of his plane, and you can see that this thing starts heading southeast about 100. At that point, it's measuring 190 miles per hour, and then it comes down and it makes a 120-degree turn, and is now down to 60 miles per hour.
Yeah. Now wait a minute. And when I saw that, I said, "Wait a minute. I'm not an aeronautical genius, but can something stay up in the air at 60 miles an hour?"
Well, it gets even more excited, because then it goes from 60 miles an hour down to 38 to 45 to 36, and 43, and it's just barely moving along, right? So here's an object that at one point was like maybe 140 miles per hour off of his wing, and then it's 190 miles per hour. It's moving away, then it immediately makes that kind of a turn, and it's now down to 60 miles per hour. And you got to understand that each of these like little dots are the representations of where its position was within one sweep of the radar.
Okay, so looking at figure 5.
Yeah.
Okay, I see the sphere representing the Cessna 172. The triangle, and where is it in figure 5? Is it way over here off by Highway 11 or whatever?
Well, that's the direction that it continued to move after it, was near the plane, I guess. It was moving, it moved southeast, and then it suddenly started heading northeast, and then eventually made its way up towards the area of Picayune. So the object, with each one of those little dots, is where the plane's movement was.
Right.
As it was going along. Where those arrows are following the little directions at where we've got the little blip, if you would, that comes from the radar set in Citronelle, indicating where its position was. Now, the difference here is, and this is what we're still trying to account for, is if you look at where that initial dot was, that the plane, and we're tracking this along in a time sequence, right?
Right.
We're basically showing that between the 324 to 326, right in the same time frame that the pilot reported, it was about 3:30, right? About 3:30. He didn't say it was 3:30. He said it was about 3:30. Mm-hmm. And this object is being tracked from about 324 to about 326.
Wow.
So it corresponds again to being in the position where he would have observed it.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Well, yeah, and I got to point out to you, Rick. I mean, this is kind of interesting because this is a good track and good observation, and even in the situation where you had the radar data from the Stephenville case,
right?
What you had was that you didn't have a case where you had the aircraft moving south were actually appearing on the same radar with the object. Here we have the both objects. We have the plane and we have the object. And that's exciting for me.
Now, have you ever seen data come back showing something moving 35 miles an hour in the air like that?
Well, yeah, you can have slow moving objects. I mean, we've had UFOs that have been hovering, right?
Okay. Right. But it was a UFO case. I mean, there's nothing other than UFO cases where you've seen something like this.
Right. No, I'm not. And the other thing is that we're trying to initially we tried to make sure that the weather was not the issue, that it was not anomalous propagation. The weather was perfect that day. There was no even likelihood that it was a heat inversion or an air inversion that would have caused that kind of anomaly. In addition to that, it's like, is this a drone type of activity?
Right.
And we don't believe. I think we pretty much have ruled out the drone explanation for it. And we're hoping to be able. I mean, if there's a logical explanation to what this thing could be, it would be nice to know. But we have been able to not identify any explanation other than it being an unknown at this point, moving around this aircraft.
Now, back when the pilot said that this was just off of his wing.
Yeah.
And then I think you said he looked back and it had left or moved. Was that like a blink of an eye type move? Did he say, or?
No, he said that he actually could see that it was kind of moving away from him slowly. In other words, its speed, if it was pacing his plane at 140 miles an hour, let's say, right?
Right.
It started to gradually decrease it down to maybe 130 miles an hour or something of that nature. So it started to gradually pull back, and then he kept trying to peer out and see if he could see it, and he couldn't see it anymore. So he lost track of where it went after that.
So it is possible, and I know that this is a reach, but it is possible that this UFO could have, or this object could have, moved a half a mile or a mile in the matter of a second. The pilot didn't notice it.
Yes.
Now, would a radar pick up such a fast move?
Well, and that's the other key thing here is that you need to be aware of. The radar, for example, when the object was up directly next to him, it would only see the plane, right? It might not even make out the fact that it was next to his plane. That's right, because it would look like one big object, right? Correct. And then the other thing that I want to mention here is that for some reason, in other words, you had the radar that was picking up his transponder from Slidell, okay? The Citronelle radar did not show his plane. It showed the object. And so it was not until we put the two of these things together that we were able to get it. Now, the object obviously had no transponder on it, right? Okay, so that's how it was differentiated, was by the transponder. Correct. Okay. And so that was the electromagnetic pulse, if you would, basically hitting it and providing a backscatter kind of like, or a return back to that facility. And they're just tracking the object, not him. Well, let me ask you, Rich. I mean, so obviously we have something flying around in our airspace with no transponder. Right. Isn't that something that the government, the military tend to look out for? Or does this happen all the time? Well, yeah, it's a concern, certainly. And, you have different airspace requirements, and of course, this is what the FAA is trying to come to grips with right now with the context of drones, right? Right. If people are going to be flying drones, at what point do you have to have one of these drones with a transponder on it, right? And at what point, now does it have to file a flight plan? At what point do you have, and you get to these certain altitudes that they're going to have to be able to figure out, because you have flight safety and you have to be able to avoid, collision with a normal aircraft. Right. And aircraft fly at different altitudes. So here you have a case of if it were hypothetically a drone, it's at 2,500 feet altitude. It's flying around, making some incredible maneuvers, by the way. The fact that it came even that close to the aircraft would be a flight safety issue, and hopefully we'd have this all figured out, right? But I got to admit, I would tell you that I had talked with the pilot. He had mentioned that even on another occasion some time ago, before this, that he had been flying along and saw a Mylar balloon go by, and that there was a Mylar balloon. And so he thought that initially that this might have been the same kind of thing, except the fact that it was pacing his plane, and it's got this obvious appearance to it with a dorsal fin, which he had never seen before either. So. It just didn't make any sense. And now here we are picking up this kind of an object moving around, 190 miles an hour, making a 120 degree turn, and then suddenly down to 60, and then 35 and 46, and moving extremely slow in the area. So, what about military bases of any kind in this area? Or this the only thing that's nearby is southeast of Picayune. You've got the Stennis. Stennis may, and this is one of the things we also looked at, Stennis may over there be doing some sort of testing, but typically these testing, even like drones and things like that, should not be being performed over public airspace.
And right next to public pilots or private pilots?
Or even over Picayune, the Picayune Airport, right? I mean, and that's right where this thing was about or hanging around. And so, that's not what they would do on a flight test. So, I mean, I'm in Huntsville, Alabama, and we've got Redstone Arsenal down here, and with NASA, Marshall Space Flight Center. And we do have down in the southern end of the post some tests of drones, that even here in Huntsville. And, and in fact, the home of Army Aviation's probably UAV program is the command for it's right over here at the Arsenal that I work at. AMCOM is the Aviation Missile Command, and Aviation's one part of it, and they would be doing all the work on UAV programs within the Army. So, it's just very puzzling, but, I mean, again, it's like, here's an object that, by the way, this case is right now listed as one of the potential nominees for being the top 10 cases in the year 2013 within MUFON.
Well, I can see why. I tell you. What was the response of the pilot when you showed him? I take it you showed him all this radar data. I mean, was he amazed or?
Oh, well, yeah, he was like, he had no idea that we would be able to get it. And secondly, that there would be some sort of an object even remotely. And he was extremely excited about the fact that it helped to validate and confirm what he had been seeing, right? That he saw something, right?
Yeah.
And again, he was extremely excited about that. And again, it gives him, a feeling of gratitude that he's helping to contribute to, the UFO kind of phenomena.
Unbelievable. Well, I tell you, it just, it keeps getting stranger every day, Rich. I mean, it's just...
Yeah. Oh, no kidding.
I don't know. Now, will this information be shared back with any military or government agency? Will they say, hey, look at this. Why are these things flying around unknown to us?
Well, I don't know. For example, like you have NARCAP, which is led by Richard Haynes. And he's got the NARCAP group has been collecting all the, anything to do with pilots reporting their sightings of objects. And then the question happens is that, I mean, that's public information. I mean, he posted up on the website a lot of these cases and a lot of his reports and studies. And so I would hope that if anything else, that kind of data would be used to support, getting government involvement in this. But, and of course, my information in my report, anybody can go into CMS and log in and look for my case number, which was the 46835, and see the report. So you can just go to MUFON.com and see that. Also, it was advertised, and you can find the radar report just by doing a simple search on Google. You can see William Puckett's report that he put in. Just look up Mississippi pilot case, and there's a number of links that'll take you to that. So,
wow, excellent.
It's available and it's being shared, and we're doing our best to, like I said, try to get it out. And it's interesting stuff,
Absolutely. One thing you had mentioned early in the conversation was that this took place over a nature preserve, I believe you said, or something like that, right?
Correct.
Is that a common scenario? Do we see a lot of these UFO reports over such type of lands?
Well, to me, I mean, so UFOs have always had some sort of an affinity to a variety of things. They've always had an affinity to, like, at least people allege that that's the case. But I remember early on, like Hynek and a variety of other people that were all suggesting that there seems to be a connection to water. Mm-hmm. And here you have a creek. You have some indications that there's also over nuclear facilities and anything nuclear, as you very well know, the whole nuke thing.
Right.
And then there's been a good number of sightings around military locations, and then you have to question, well, were they investigated cases? Was it really military or was it a UFO? And we don't know, and we're not sure. I've had triangle cases that were hanging over during military exercises, by the way, in Mississippi. So you have a triangle, and two soldiers, I guess, in the exercise they're doing a live fire kind of thing, and they're looking up and watching a triangle overhead. So, you'll have that. You'll have power lines. People indicate that there's connections to power lines, and then you have to question, well, are they seeing, like a ball plasma around the power line or what? But
right.
So there's a lot of connections to a lot of different things, and of course, here what we see is an object that's hanging around, initially around the town of Picayune and around near the airport, and then kind of like over in the wildlife area. You get what I'm saying?
Right.
So it's hard to draw all these connections. I think, the key thing for me is always to have cases that are investigated that appear to be unknown in their descriptions, and using those cases to determine what the behavior of a UFO is, as opposed to what many might be doing is adding in all of the IFO cases to their decisions about what the behavior of an object is, and you're not getting the right information.
Yep, I totally agree.
You know what I'm talking about, Rick. I mean, people nowadays will see something on the internet. The next thing they know is that they figure that that's a real legitimate UFO, and then they're saying, well, UFOs behave that way. Well, it could be likely that the object has a natural explanation or a man-made object, and it is not that way for the true UFO. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we've been talking about that on the show now, Rich, for quite some time. All of this misinformation and
it's terrible.
The damage it does. So.
Let me, if I can, take a moment of your time to tell you, but
sure.
A lot of people right now are watching the TV show called Close Encounters, for example. And in Close Encounters, it's an excellent show. It's being shown a lot of the older cases that are out there, like Delphos case, the Cash Landrum case, the Alaskan case, and a lot of these different cases. But guess what? As they're doing the retelling, they're injecting false information or incorrect information, which now adds to the mythology about the case and not getting what accurately was projected as happening according to the original source information. And let me give you an example. If you in the Cash Landrum case, they're showing the object and it's spitting out some sort of lightning. Well, it never had that on it. There was, and then if you go back to the original kind of descriptions by the original witnesses, you find out that the object didn't have any kind of blue lights in the middle, and that was added. And you have the Delphos, Kansas case that was projected as happening in daylight. Well, it didn't. It was at night. It was like 7 p.m. in November, and as well as I do, at that time it's dark. And so, I mean, there's these kind of things in the retelling that are coming up that are inaccurate. So,
well, the problem with these television shows, is that I guess they feel they must have a certain entertainment level.
That's right.
Or, the ratings are going to suffer.
And they use the subject of UFOs to help boost viewership and ratings.
Absolutely. I mean, how many new UFO shows have come out over the last 2-3 years? It's getting ridiculous.
Well, it is, and I hate to say it, but in the 50 years that I've been doing this and looking for that one TV show that I can go to that actually did the job, if you would, I can count on one hand the number of those kind of TV shows that basically stand out as being pretty good. I mean, but the rest of them are all terrible.
Well,
absolutely terrible.
Yeah, I agree with you. Now, if I look at this from the producer side of things, I can tell you that, I've captured enough analytical data just on my little show here that I can absolutely positively tell you that a video or an episode will get X number of times more hits if the entertainment value is higher than its educational value. It's just a given.
Yes, I agree.
I could have somebody on here telling the tallest tale in the world, and it will get 5 times as many views as, what we're doing tonight, which just kills me. But it's a fact of life.
I hear you. And boy, I sure acknowledge that. And so what we have, the challenge is getting the story out about the good UFO, the real legitimate information out to the public, unless the producers will agree to produce it the way we want it and not interject their own stuff into how it's supposed to be. And, I'm sorry, but, it's I don't know. It frustrates me to no end to watch. I don't even hardly want to watch TV at all.
The whole thing about television, especially these days, is that it's not about the TV show. That's just secondary content to be able to play the commercials. You can't do 30 minutes straight of commercials, so you have to have some kind of content in it. And it's got to be something that people will stick with, so if they have to beef it up a little bit to do it, well, then they don't mind. Where us folks that are very serious about this topic, it just makes you furious, doesn't it, Rich? You got me going now.
All right, well, good. I'm glad I got you going.
I just can't stand it.
Well, it's a hot button for a lot of us people who have been looking at it for a long time to see these kind of things happening. And, and I don't know that it's ever going to end. And, and then you're out there trying to fight to be able to keep it serious and not become a carnival or a joke or whatever like that. And so we can keep people, and that's what I've been doing a lot of lately. It's just trying to be able to keep people on a serious note with this whole subject because it deserves serious attention.
Exactly. I mean, this case we talked about tonight. I mean, come on, that's some good stuff there. And the witness deserves
a serious look and serious attention.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And so I'm trying to do right by the witness that reports it. And hey, look, that's pretty much where I'm at, though, Rick. I also value what you're doing because trying to get the word out is very, very important, and we can't rely on television and these shows to do it either. So
no. Luckily, we do have the internet. It's a double-edged sword, but at least we do have the ability to control, somewhat anyway. So.
Yep.
All right, Rich. Well, listen, thanks again for coming back and visiting us again and bringing this case to our attention. It just goes by the Mississippi pilot case, right? If people wanted to search on it.
Oh, yeah. They'll find hits on it, Mississippi pilot case or, Mississippi UFO pilot and those words or whatever, and they'll get the hit on it. All right.
All right. Excellent. All right, Rich. Well, as always, we'll stay in touch. And if anything absolutely prolific comes back with some more information on this case, let me know, and we'll have you back on and we'll talk about it.
All right, sir. Well, thank you, and it's glad to chat with you again, and look forward to seeing you again, Rick.
Very good, Rich. Talk to you later. Good night.
Good night.
Good night, everyone. If you have not heard about this case or don't know much about it, you'll definitely want to stay tuned, because this case actually has some hard proof evidence, I guess you would say, mainly in the realm of radar data. And it seems to me like it matches up almost exactly with what the pilot of the Cessna plane reported. It appears that this object that this pilot reported was first noticed on one of his wings, just off the side of his wings. And then the radar data shows this thing jumping from speeds between 150 miles an hour down to 35 miles an hour, and then speeding up again and doing some radical turns. Bizarre stuff. Bizarre. So you'll definitely want to stay tuned and listen to Mr. Hoffman tell us about this.
The lifeblood of a democracy is your ability to understand and act upon a problem once the facts are presented to you. The purpose of this motion picture is to give you the facts, and then you, as individuals and citizens of a democracy, must take action.
Greetings, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Topic UFO. Today, we're going to be welcoming back one of my favorite ufologists and MUFON representatives, Mr. Rich Hoffman. Rich is the state director for MUFON for both Alabama and Mississippi, I believe. And he is here tonight, or will be here tonight, to talk to us about the Mississippi pilot case.
So fast that there is something out there watching us, and we need to know what it is.
And that means we have to spend time studying. So we need people that have an interest in it, who want to study.
In Huntsville, Alabama, Wayne Herford, WTVA News.
And if you would like to know more about the Mutual UFO Network, you can visit their website at MUFON.com.
Welcome back, everybody. At this time, I'd like to go ahead and bring our guest on for the evening, Mr. Rich Hoffman. Rich, are you out there, sir?
I am here. Rick, how are you?
Doing great. Thanks so much for coming back for your second appearance here on Topic UFO. I appreciate that.
No problem. I'm looking forward to being with you again.
Now, Rich, the last time you were here, I believe you were the state director for MUFON for either 2 or 3 states. I can't remember. But right now you're the state director for Alabama and Mississippi. Is that it?
That is correct.
Okay. So don't go away. We'll be back in 1 minute, and we'll be speaking to Mr. Rich Hoffman. Don't go away.
New tonight at 6. Do you believe in UFOs? Well, one area group certainly does, and members believe that UFOs or unidentified flying objects are not only real, but have been spotted in places like Mississippi, Alabama, and Louisiana.
Who knew? Wayne Herford had a conversation recently with one of the group's leaders.
Well, the mission of MUFON is to scientifically study UFOs for actually the benefit of humanity.
That's Richard Hoffman, the director of the Mutual Unidentified Flying Object Network for both Mississippi and Alabama. The Dayton, Ohio native has been a member of MUFON since the organization was founded in 1969. His travels have taken him all over the country, cataloging and studying alleged UFO sightings. If you think he's kidding, you'd be wrong. In fact, he says just last year, they were busily tracking UFO sightings in our area.
Alabama, for example, last year had somewhere around in the range of about 70 sightings that it reported. Mississippi had about half of those.
But one of those reported sightings, he says, has gained prominence throughout the network, and it's being featured on the group's website as the Mississippi Pilot Case. Hoffman offers radar images of the Mississippi Pilot Case, which he says show an object of some kind following alongside a Cessna airplane flown out of Slidell, Louisiana. This is a rendered photo of what he says the pilot says he saw.
And as he's approaching, on his approach, heading north, he ends up running across this object that was just underneath his wing of his Cessna. That's how close it was. Now, what flies that fast, does that kind of banking turn, and makes that incredible kind of maneuvering? We don't know.
Hoffman says there are as many as 700 sightings reported each month across the globe. Multiply that by 12, he says, and you see why he and his members are keeping busy. However, he does caution that sometimes things are not always what they seem.
Like here's a cloud, lenticular cloud, and we separate out from the clouds as much as we can, you know.
There have been other mistakes too, he says, which turn out to be smudges on a woman's windshield. But despite the mistakes and even downright skepticism of many, Hoffman and MUFON hold